Okay, so today we're going to be talking about flying while fat. Hi, if you don't already know, my name is Lisa, and today is October 17th, 2022. And today we're going to be talking about flying while fat, as previously mentioned. And this is kind of a really highly sensitive topic for a lot of people, but it's been in the news recently. There's a conservative vlogger named Sydney Watson, and she recently experienced a situation while flying where she's a particularly thin person. Like I think she's pretty tall, but she's thin, and she was in the middle seat of a flight. I'm guessing like economy, and she had on either side of her two morbidly obese people, and she was kind of like squished into her seat, and they were kind of overlapping onto her seat. She couldn't put down her tray. She had a really hard time just getting comfortable and just like being able to have any sort of space while she was flying. But before we get more into that, today I am drinking coffee with my cup here, and it's a Moomin cup. I love my Moomin cups. People don't know that it's like a little Finnish animal. It's like a made-up magical creature. It's really popular in Japan and really popular in Finland, and it kind of really just increased tourism between two countries because people in Japan love it so much, and people from Finland can go there and get a lot of really cool Moomin stuff. Anyways, I also have some really cool earrings on today. It's just more fall Halloween earrings. I'm gonna get really close to the camera so I can show you. So I have this cute, witch earring here, and it's like a witch hat, if you can see. I think it's super cute. And then I have this like cauldron one that matches it, and I love them. And of course, Target, obviously. So the reason why I bring up this Sydney Watson story is because this is a situation that's happened to me a lot of times, but of course on the other side of the issue, because as you may know, just guessing by a lot of my videos, yes, I am overweight. I am also in that obese category of weight. Now, what a lot of people don't know is that obesity actually falls into three different categories. You have obese, morbidly obese, and super morbidly obese. The super morbidly obese is like a new one, and I guess people didn't really like what it was called, so they kind of reclassified them into obesity class 1, obesity class 2, and obesity class 3. Now, as of now, I actually fall into that obesity class 3, super morbidly obese, so I really do understand what it's like to be like quite overweight while flying and just how uncomfortable it is. And I really want to speak to what Sydney Watson's experience was as a thin person, having to sit next to somebody who appeared to be also super morbidly obese in that class 3 morbid obesity. Now, I don't blame her at all for being very uncomfortable. This might be controversial to other overweight people, but I do think that she had a right to feel uncomfortable in that situation. She did pay for a seat, or somebody paid for that seat for her. So she had that 18 inches of seat width that was supposed to be for her. And yeah, sometimes, everybody's not made the same size. So even if you were even if you were thin, but you were like a really tall, muscular person, you still might hang over a little bit. And, the little bit of touching is expected in public transportation. But when I was looking at those pictures, it was very clear, like, she was in the middle seat, and she only had like half her seat. Now, this isn't to say that people who are overweight and obese aren't entitled to travel, and they aren't entitled to, take up space in some capacity. But I kind of do draw the line at taking up other people's space. Because, yeah, you're allowed to exist, and you're allowed to live whatever lifestyle you want, and you're allowed to, just live your life in general. But I as a personal philosophy, I try not to impose on other people. And that's not to say being fat is a imposition in general to others. Actually, that's where, the fat shaming and fat phobia stuff always comes in, because, it's people will act like your mere existence is an imposition just for the fact that they have to look at you. And that's just not true. Once more, you're allowed to exist. That being said, there actually is a physical imposition in this situation. I know not everybody can afford to fly first class. Not everybody can afford to fly Comfort Plus if they're super tall. And so there are going to be uncomfortable situations in economy where people are going to squish together somewhat. But I think in this situation, with a brother and sister traveling together, as this was the situation, one of them should have bought 2 seats so they could have 3 seats just between the two of them. It was really unfair, I think, to expect somebody to sit between them when there clearly wasn't enough space. And, part of this could be on the side of the airlines. It could be their fault a little bit for making those seats too small to begin with. I mean, someone like Sydney Watson probably could fit into an 18-inch seat pretty well, but a 6'4" man who just happens to be larger by nature, it's going to have a really hard time fitting into those seats. And so by default, he would have to pay more anyways. Now, people would make the argument that, well, if you're overweight, that's a choice sometimes. And so because you are choosing to be overweight, then you should have to pay more. I mean, that is something that she spoke to in her video, and I really did like some of the things that she said. She said that she acknowledged that there were a lot of people out there who couldn't control their weight and that she felt bad for them, and she wasn't talking about those people. And I like that she said that, because I am one of those people. I did gain a lot of weight, like just due to severe hormonal issues that I didn't know about for like over a decade, and it took forever for doctors to figure it out. And she said that was not most people. I would disagree with that part. I do think most people have gained weight not by choice. I do think there's an issue with the way that the government talks about health and diet, and the things that they've encouraged people to eat are actually very bad for them. They tell you to eat things that you shouldn't eat, and they say don't eat things that you really should eat. I think, if you educate an entire 3 generations on terrible eating habits, then I don't think that's their fault that they didn't follow through on those, because not everybody's going to have the resources or, peace of mind or ability to figure out what they should actually eat for their body to maintain a healthy weight. And that's something that I'm currently figuring out too, because now that I'm on all these medications to help me lose weight, now I actually have to eat correctly so I can lose weight. Because, once you've gained it, you can go on the medications to make your metabolism work well, and it will help you lose weight much easier than if you didn't have those issues. It still doesn't fix everything. You still have to put in the work to find the right diet to help you, lose the weight effectively. So let's get to this next part. Is it fat shaming, and is it fat phobic? Yes, it's fat shaming, but it's not the kind of fat shaming that I've talked about in my previous videos. As mentioned, when we're talking about fat shaming, we're talking about people just basically hating on fat people for the mere reason that they're fat, and just getting in their business when they shouldn't be in their business. Now, this is a situation where somebody was in Sydney Watson's business. She probably would not have said anything about these people if she didn't have to physically deal with them, if she wasn't sweated on, if she wasn't being touched the entire time, if she couldn't put down her tray table, things that she was basically entitled to for purchasing that seat. So in this case, I don't want to say fat shaming is warranted, but I understand why that would be her go-to thing here. Personally, I think if I were in that situation, I would be upset as well. I would be like, hey, I am squishing into this seat too. Why are we all squishing together? But is it fat phobic? I don't think it's fat phobic. I don't think it's fat phobic at all. I think it's a situation where, as mentioned, she was kind of being squished against her will. She was just talking about her situation from a point of comfort and, things that she would have liked to do. And it was kind of really unfair to her that the airlines treated her that way when she said, hey, I'm not happy with my flight experience, and they're kind of like, too bad. Well, maybe you should refund her half her flight because she had half a seat. And once again, people do talk about is it really fair that fat people should have to pay more to fly? And you could always drive. I guess if you're going overseas, you might have to purchase another ticket, but that's just do you really want to touch other people as well? Because that's how I feel. I don't want to go on a plane and I don't want to touch people. So I actually do make the choice to fly either Comfort Plus or first class when I can. Obviously, I can't fly first class yet when I'm, traveling internationally, but domestically, it can be affordable if you buy your tickets ahead of time. If you buy your tickets 3 months ahead of time, it's the same price as if you buy an economy ticket 2 weeks ahead of your flight. It's essentially the same price, first class and economy. So there's not that much of a difference if you plan for it. And I do think if you're overweight, you should really plan for it. Now, I've had some people tell me, but Comfort Plus is the same seat width. I'm like, well, yeah, it's the same seat width as economy, but you can still stretch your legs out, and so you're not having that 90-degree angle, so your thighs stick out. You can put your legs out so your thighs are kind of thinner, and I've done that before, and I take really good care to kind of just wrap my arms like this, and just kind of make sure I'm not touching anybody. And like I said, that's for me as much as it is for other people. So what's my personal experience of flying while fat? What do I do? Well, as I said, I typically fly first class or Comfort Plus, but in the past when I would fly economy, I would typically go with my mom or a friend or my dad, and we would just squish together. We were okay with touching each other because we knew each other, and that's a little different, so we could not bother anybody else. But when I fly alone now, which is 90% of my flights now, I fly alone, I will upgrade to Comfort Plus or first class. And I actually had an experience recently, I think it was just a couple days after Sydney Watson's experience. So I was unfortunately stuck in the middle seat because this was a full flight. And I was in Comfort Plus because first class was astronomical. And I was like, you know what? I can make it work. I'm just going to squish in a little bit because, even though I am in that super morbidly obese category, which is, by the way, let me break that down for you so you understand. Overweight is anything between 25 and 35 BMI. So once you get over 25 to 35, you're overweight. Once you get 35 to 40, you are now obese. When you're 40 to 50 BMI, you are morbidly obese. And when you're over 50, you're super morbidly obese. Now you're going to find a lot of bodybuilders and stuff who are going to fall into that morbidly obese category. And a lot of people will bring this up as, BMI doesn't really mean as much. Numbers, it doesn't take into account muscle. And yeah, that's true, but that's not the case for most people who are overweight. I know, controversial. Anyways, so I do find myself into that just over 50 BMI. And I'm almost under it. I'm almost a regular morbidly obese. But right now I'm super morbidly obese. And I actually do have a lot of muscle because I'm very active. My job is a very active job. I'm getting 10,000 steps a day. I do full body weightlifting workouts, which make me very sore. And I gain a lot of muscle very easily. So a lot of doctors even don't expect me to be super morbidly obese when they weigh me. They're always surprised. They always think I weigh about 50 to 60 pounds lighter than I actually do, just because I carry my weight so well, being very muscular. And that kind of goes back to my hormonal issues as well, because I was keeping all my fat and then gaining a bunch of muscle at the same time. And doctors are like, we don't understand why you're not losing the fat, but you're gaining all this muscle. You should be losing fat and gaining muscle if you're doing everything right. And now I'm finally losing the actual fat because I'm on medication for it. I wanted to give you an expectation of what that actually means. I'm super morbidly obese, over 50 BMI, and when I fly, it's not the most comfortable thing. Now, that being said, I actually can squish into that's so triggering for some people. I can squish into a Comfort Plus seat, and I'm not hanging over. I'm not touching anybody. That being said, I do have to hold myself in like this. I kind of have to squeeze my legs together, my arms like this, especially in the middle seat. If I'm on the window, I can be just one arm like that, or I'm on the aisle, there's one arm. And I don't mind sitting like this. That's how I sleep anyways. I'm kind of pretzel when I sleep. But in the middle, I was like this. And the guy who was on my right on the window, he was a huge man. He wasn't overweight, but he was a tall person. And he got it too. He understood. He was 6'2", 6'4", something like that. And he was doing that because he knew that with his body type, he was going to touch me if he just let himself relax. And so he was sitting like this and kind of leaning against the window, and he wasn't touching me. We did a good job. We didn't touch each other the whole flight. Now, the guy on my left, who was in the aisle, was an asshole. Just gonna say it. Because he was a normal weight person. He wasn't that tall. He was only 5'10" or something. Maybe 6 feet, but not super tall. And he, for some reason, just wanted to put his elbows on both armrests. Now, I'm sure a lot of you have seen that comedy skit. I can't remember the comedian at the moment. But he's he's a comedian and he talks about airplane etiquette, and he brings up the excellent point that if you're in the window seat, you have one armrest and you have the wall. And if you're in the aisle seat, you have the little bit of leg extension and you have your other armrest. And if you're in the middle, you get both armrests. It's just airplane etiquette. And so I was expecting to have, at least like my fat gap over onto the other armrest. So they're just, I get that full length. It's like the 18 inches of seat, the 2 inches of armrest. So I'm getting like 22 inches of space. And for some reason, he wanted both of his elbows on both armrests. And so when his elbow would slip, it would go into my seat and he would poke me in the stomach with his elbow. And I'm sure it was really annoying to him, but it was also really annoying to me. I was doing my best not to touch him, and he was impeding into my space and touching me. So even as, a fat person, he was a thin person, I was a fat person, and he was impeding into my space, and it was super annoying. So I can only imagine how annoying it was for Sydney to just be sitting there, taking up her seat. She probably doesn't even need the full 18 inches, but she was entitled to that 18 inches. And then you had people literally impeding into her seat so much that they were touching her, sweating on her. She wasn't able to use her tray table. And she got half a seat. That's ridiculous. I completely agree with her that she didn't have to put up with that. She wasn't treated correctly. Those people should have bought that extra seat if they were so large that they couldn't fit into one seat. That's just my opinion as a fellow super morbidly obese person. Because as stated, I don't want to touch other people either. I don't know why they thought this was okay. And to be fair, let's say they did buy that extra seat. I have heard cases where the airline will try to sell that middle seat to somebody else because they're like, oh, it's empty. Yeah, they bought it, but no one's sitting there. Let's try and sell it. I don't think that was the case because otherwise they would have made an uproar. They would have been like, hey, this is supposed to be our seat. We paid for it. And I'm sure Sydney would have been like, hey, I think that's perfectly fair. So once again, it's not fat phobic. Is it fat shaming though? Yeah, it is, but it's not the toxic kind that I've talked about in the past. This is an actual case where, regardless of whether they were fat or not, you were imposing on somebody else. Now this is not to say like, hey, let's be a collectivist society. Let's just all think about other people. I am more individualist. At the same time, we do have to think about some people sometimes. We have to make sure that we're not, we have to make sure that we're just not being jerks to others. And feel like this was a jerk situation. Anyways, Sydney, I promise you, no matter how much we disagree on stuff or how much we agree on other stuff, I would not have, gone into your personal space. If worst case scenario, I would have sucked myself in and thrown myself over to the side, and because I would not want to make you feel uncomfortable. And I know that's going to be very, very controversial to other fat people and this weird fat culture that we then live in of saying you're allowed to take up as much space as you want and just impose on people as much as you want and you can be healthy at any size. But I don't subscribe to that. I subscribe to health honesty. If you're overweight, you're likely not going to be healthy. That being said, you're allowed to live your life any way you want to. That's just it. Anyways, hope you liked my cute earrings, and I hope you have a great day. See you later.